Okay.
Cool.
Uh, Hi there, everybody. My name is Dawn Hutchins. I'm the owner of VegeCooking, and I'm so excited today to be doing a interview with Dr. Lindsey Merritt. She is a board certified gastroenterologist, and I met her when my mom was actually in the hospital at Baptist South for a pancreatitis issue, which she is fine now, thankfully. But Dr. Lindsey made such a great impression on me because she really made the connection between what we eat and our gastrointestinal health. So I asked her if she would do a interview with us to just talk about the importance of that and even how it relates to children. So she is taking time out of her busy day to answer some questions for us. So welcome, Dr. Lindsey. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you so much, Dawn. I'm so excited to be here. This is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. I'm very passionate about nutrition and especially, starting kids off on the right foot. So thank you so much for inviting me to talk with you today.
Okay, awesome. So the first question I have, and I want to make sure that we can see you as you are speaking. So I'm going to try and actually do the side by side.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So I think in the video, everyone will be able to see both of us. So,
Cool.
all right. What made you want to become a GI doctor?
So, back to my interest in nutrition, that is really what drove my interest in learning about the digestive system in medical school. It just kind of came, not that it came easily to me, but, that's where my interest lies. So I was, wanted to understand on a deeper level, how is our food processed? How are our nutrients absorbed? Because that determines so much of our overall health, as well as can cause, specific GI related conditions. So really that's what drew me to the field. And then the more that I learned about it and all of the cool procedures we get to do, endoscopic, upper endoscopies, colonoscopies, and there's so many new procedures that have been developed over the past, even 5 to 10 years that really there's the sky's the limit in terms of things we can do now endoscopically for weight loss procedures and managing pancreatic disease and liver diseases. And so in a nutshell, all of those things are very are fascinating to me, and so it's kind of a perfect specialty to address all of these things that I love to do.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
and this may be kind of off topic a little bit, but do GI issues cause a lot of autoimmune issues
So there, research is
related?
coming out every day, to look at the connection there, because there are certain autoimmune GI conditions. Certainly,
Mhm.
there's autoimmune liver disease or pancreatitis, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
Other autoimmune conditions that are directly related to diet, such as celiac disease, where your body actually has antibodies to the gluten protein, so you can't eat wheat in your diet.
Yeah.
Um, but above and beyond that, we're learning so much more about the microbiome, and that's part of what I'm really excited to talk to you about today,
Okay.
or talk with you about. We're learning more and more about that connection between the gut being healthy and, or in a, to say it in reverse, an unhealthy gut leading to kind of leaky gut, and then that creating inflammation, and which can kind of take a person down the road of developing autoimmune diseases. And so we're just, it's the field is growing, like I said, every day in terms of our knowledge about that specific connection. It's fascinating.
Well, and the reason I asked that, and I can't believe I hadn't thought to add this to my questions earlier, was because
Mhm.
my daughter had leaky gut, and it was so interesting because she had all of these extra things that went along with it. Um, she was getting chronic ear infections and kept having to get tubes, and then she had all this whole wide weird array of food allergies, and it was
Wow.
actually a naturopathic doctor that had said, "Hey, I think this is leaky gut." And
Mhm.
I remember when I changed her diet, it was like overnight, these issues all went away. She had had a
Wow.
massive
That's
raging ear
amazing.
infection. and they had wanted to give her a third set of ear tubes. And now
Mhm.
she has hearing damage from all the tubes. And I was like, what you guys are doing isn't working.
Right.
I don't want to do the third set of ear tubes. And I remember
Right.
the ENT being like, what's leaky gut? Like I'm a complete
Yeah.
idiot. And I'm like, well, that's
Right.
funny because it took care of all
Right.
the issues.
Right.
So anyway, okay.
Exactly. So I think what's cool about where we are in GI now is that certainly, you have kind of a more conventional way of thinking about things that, you might not have as much openness to these new um, possibilities or newly discovered entities, because definitely leaky gut is one of those where, a few years ago, even somebody's going to kind of balk at you and say,
Yes.
that's not a real thing.
Yeah.
But more and more, fortunately, as we're learning more and it's the evidence is irrefutable that certainly there's an entity called leaky gut, and yes, it's absolutely caused by diet as well as environmental exposures and whatnot. But it's about maintaining the integrity of our gut to prevent antigens or toxins or things that are not supposed to get into our gut lining from getting there. So the gut's job is to kind of keep maintain its integrity and keep those junctions really tightly closed, so that then we're not getting these foreign substances being incorporated into our body, because then that's what's propelling the or instigating the inflammatory cascade and causing a whole host of issues. So that's fascinating, and very happy that you found such a great benefit and got such a good result with addressing that as the underlying cause with your daughter. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. It was incredible. And it was almost like I started changing her diet and nobody believed it could happen. And so I was kind of on my own with doing it, but I was glad that I stuck with it and did it. But yeah, it was, this is a while. I'm trying to think. Gabby is 12 now. So she was probably 4. So,
wow. So like, really in the dark ages, kind of before that was even a term that was widely accepted. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So aside from Gabby, why is a child's gastrointestinal health important? Like, why should a mom watching this really even care if her kid's out running around, looks fine, looks healthy? And I think a lot of times people are afraid to not feed them the foods of childhood. So it's like, why should we have kids be eating, like thinking about what they're eating, and why is a child's GI health important?
Yeah, that's such an important question. So kids are growing, they're in such a unique stage of life. They're not just little adults. They are in this massive developmental period where essentially what they are taking into their bodies in terms of nutrients is literally the building blocks that they are growing. I mean, they are, developing musculoskeletally. They're obviously gaining stature. Their entire, setup for a successful, healthy life in the future is based on kind of the way that they are able to build that solid foundation. So that's why it's just so important. And as a mom, I mean, this is just such an important issue that I'm, more and more passionate about by the day, because, it's just every day my goal is get my kid the healthiest food that I can, because that is what is going to set him up with the best building blocks to create all of these important, developmental stages or steps that he is going through. So I mean, that's, in a nutshell, it's not just necessarily about the direct, diet causing GI diseases, because of course, fortunately, GI diseases are fairly uncommon in kids, and they don't really they might get some upset tummies and things like that. But, fortunately, don't have as commonly, the major issues that, I see more often in adults. But it's about looking even beyond the GI tract and just understanding that our digestion is how we absorb our vitamins, our minerals, our nutrients, and getting all of that into the body, so then you can do its other work and create this healthy little human. That's the goal.
Yes. Okay. So I guess my next question would be, what happens in our gut when we eat, say, like, so plant foods like beans and nuts and seeds
Yeah.
and vegetables and fruits. And then
Yeah.
alternatively, what happens when we eat foods like meat and seafood and dairy and eggs,
Right.
or processed and refined foods or things like that? So kind
Right.
of like what happens in our body when we eat all, all the different types of foods.
Right. Right. So, um, so basically, um, to just kind of simplify things, it really comes down to fiber intake.
Mm,
So that's just such an important piece. And, as I mentioned earlier, the microbiome that we're discovering more about every single day, and how important it is and intricately related to all of our body systems. What we have pretty well established at this point is that fiber is the food for your microbiome. And
mhm,
just to break it down even simpler, what is the microbiome? That refers to your gut bugs. So, the healthy bacteria that you hear about that's living in our gut that we all want to have there because it is providing us with life, basically. So we've got these gut bugs. They're hanging out in our intestine, most predominantly in the colon.
mhm,
And depending on what we eat, we can either foster those gut bugs or we can kind of deprive them and make them really unhappy.
mhm,
Um, so, when we're looking at specific types of food, and when I said, it all boils down to fiber essentially. So, when someone is eating fiber, so where does that come from? All plants offer fiber. So,
mhm,
if you are eating plants, you are getting fiber. Of course, there's, some that have a little bit more than others, but, any fruit, any vegetable, any whole grain is going to give your body such a great benefit in terms of all of the nutrients, phytochemicals, all of those things, but especially because of the fiber.
mhm,
So what that does is that you eat fruits and veggies, the food products breaks down through your gut, goes through your stomach and then your small intestine, and then works its way down to your colon. So eventually it makes its way down to your gut bugs.
mhm.
And if they get a big bolus of fiber, they're having a feeding frenzy, so happy, they're going to town and just gobbling it all up, and they are happy gut bugs.
Okay.
So when they're happy, we're happy because they produce all kinds of chemicals and short chain fatty acids, that feed back to, again, our whole body, every system in our body. So, I mean, we're even learning about, these short chain fatty acids go up into our brain and help prevent Alzheimer's and
Oh,
keep our brains healthy. They go and prevent cardiovascular disease. They work on every single body system,
mhm,
way above and beyond just our stomach and our intestine. So, happy gut bugs, happy life. We are setting ourselves up for feeling good. Our body's going to work the best. Our body functions are going to be all intact. Now, if you're following a lower fiber diet, which tends to be, so meat has no fiber,
mhm.
dairy products do not have fiber. Um, if sure you have, like, I think I've seen yogurts where they kind of put fiber, like,
Yeah.
additive in, but
Yeah.
that's really just a bunch of chemicals. That doesn't count for real healthy fiber. So when we're looking at meat and dairy, if someone is eating that at every meal or predominantly those types of foods, you're not giving your body any fiber or very little fiber. And so what that's doing is that same thing. It's being digested down our gut, and then once it gets to the colon, the gut bugs are saying, "Hey, wait a minute, where's our fiber? Where's our meal? We're starving." And instead of having fiber to eat, the gut bugs actually can start to eat away at the mucus that's in our gut. And so this maybe gets a little bit yucky for people who don't love GI as much as I do, but
Just go for it.
but we are, we all have some mucus, some secretions throughout our body, and that's kind of what keeps things slippery and the food moving along and allows us to pass stool and all of that stuff. So it's kind of that slippery, maybe like whitish substance that maybe you've seen from time to time with a bowel movement. Now, we all have that mucus in our colon, and it's kind of an extra layer of protection
Mm,
on the gut wall to allow, stool to move through and kind of just be another added layer on top of our cells that protect our separate the inside of our gut from the rest of our body.
mhm,
So if these gut bugs don't have fiber to eat in the colon, what they can then do is they can turn and eat this kind of mucusy stuff. And then what's really happening is that they're eating away at our protective layer. And so then that's going to translate into gut inflammation. And then, like we've already discussed, that creates such a, a spiral of events that can lead to whole body inflammation and all kinds of, anything from gut ache all the way to developing heart disease, because of the way that, over time, that those unhealthy changes can take effect.
Okay.
So,
and so you can't just say, like, I couldn't say, well, I'm just going to eat, I don't like fruits and veggies. I don't like whole grains. I don't like beans. I'll just eat whatever, and I'll just take a ton of probiotics. So that doesn't work.
Right.
Or
so
it would be okay.
So that doesn't work. Probiotics, there are selective times when probiotics can be helpful. So if somebody has just had a big infection or something, or they've taken an antibiotic that maybe risks wiping out some of your good gut bugs, then, kind of re-supplementing and populating with probiotics might be a helpful idea for a couple of months. But what we know is that you can take a probiotic, but there's no sustainable benefit, meaning you took a probiotic last week, those gut bugs are no longer in your gut and doing their thing. What we need to do is be growing our own gut bugs, and think of it, it's almost, like a community, a population of these bugs that we want to have inside of us. And so we need to feed them, and the probiotics are not feeding them. They're kind of just almost like, a Band-Aid to get you through an acute issue like I just described, but not like a long-term solution by any means.
That's so interesting, because the probiotic supplement market is massive. And I know a lot of just people that are, even I was like, well, it can't be bad to be taking a probiotic, but it does make sense that you're kind of just, if you think about it like a community or a forest or something that's in there, you're just throwing, a couple people into the community, but you're not feeding them. So it really doesn't, they're not.
Exactly. So they're not going to make it and not going to do very well. And that's a great analogy. Yes.
Okay, good. I understand. So we may have already touched on this a little bit, but so the fact that kids are resilient, should they be able to eat anything they want? Do you ever see any essentially diet related issues with kids other than just maybe like a tummy ache or something? Because, I have seen over time interesting things going on between like food allergies and, there's also childhood diabetes and there's obesity issues, but are kids getting any kind of GI issues? And so that's my question. Kids are resilient, should be able to eat anything. And are you seeing anything that's coming?
So I think that what we are seeing is that, so yes, kids are resilient, fortunately, so that, if maybe somebody's listening to this and they're saying, hey, my kid's been eating hot dogs every day for lunch for the past week, and maybe this talk is making me rethink things, is it too late? No, of course not. Kids are so resilient. And, so they can kind of bounce back and recover. And that's why, unfortunately, I think people think, oh, my kid's not overweight, or they're fine, they're running around, so they can eat all endless sweets, or they can eat, all of this kind of processed meats or these junk food type foods, because we're not seeing that direct impact versus, an adult saying, oh, I'm watching my weight, so I'm going to avoid those things. So because kids are so resilient and generally, healthy, they have kind of been that has been overlooked, I think, unfortunately, the distinction that even though we're not seeing a direct correlation necessarily between my kids eating this and feeling, developing this disease, we are, again, keeping in mind that we're wanting to provide our kids with just the very best nutrients for their growing bodies, that being above all else the most important thing. As far as specific diseases that we are maybe seeing more of, the amount of chronic disease that we have in our country, especially with the SAD, standard American diet, which, the acronym is SAD because it is a SAD diet. And so, we're seeing kids with chronic diseases. Now, that can look like anything from obesity all the way to asthma. And you might say, okay, asthma, where's the correlation there between, eating a pepperoni pizza and developing asthma?
Yeah.
And, some people are predisposed, and then there might not be. And it's not to place blame or say that yes, your pepperoni pizza or your bologna sandwich is causing your kids asthma. Of course, you can't make an outright, claim like that. But what we do know is that the more junk, and by junk I mean especially processed meats. I think that's such a big one that kids get fed so often.
Yes.
But overall, any kind of overconsumption of meat and dairy foods, and then processed foods, junk food, sweets, chips, processed oils, all of those things, all of these foods that are not plant foods that don't give you that fiber. Again, we're looking at just that same mechanism of taking in that junk food and creating inflammation in the body. And then how is that going to show up for your kid? We don't know until we see it. So maybe it does make them, precipitate a diabetes. Maybe it does contribute to their inflammation, causing their asthma. There's been some really interesting studies looking at the effects of dairy foods on specifically allergies and asthma and that sort of thing, and even people who have found success with eliminating dairy foods from their diet and really almost reversing those pulmonary diseases. So I really think that anything is possible, and in terms of both ways, that any harm can be done from eating the wrong diet, and if you're feeding your body the right foods, any kind of disease process can be halted and or reversed.
Okay, so I just have two more questions. One being, what is sort of for GI health the gold standard of what should we be eating? What's like the gold standard?
So that's like a whole nother conversation. We could have a talk about that for hours and hours.
Yeah.
And obviously there's no agreement. I mean, in our culture, we have, there's the Atkins diet, the paleo diet, all of these things.
So confusing.
It's extremely confusing. And so it leaves the average person to either say, be confused, I have no idea, and just kind of give in to, okay, so I'll just go eat my normal, whatever, junk food or pizza or whatever. So, I think that absolutely a diet, if somebody has any medical conditions, a diet can definitely be personalized to meet their needs. And so I'm a big believer in kind of saying that, there are some generalized recommendations, but with the caveat that we can really, if somebody's looking for just a really optimal level of health, we can really individualize a diet to meet those specific needs. But what we do know, and what we can say pretty broadly, is that back to this fiber thing, fiber is key. So an overall plant-based diet is the optimal diet for human beings.
Okay.
And again, it goes back to just that mechanism, feeding your gut bugs. They in turn repay you back with producing all kinds of happy hormones and chemicals and distribute them throughout your body to keep you healthy. And so I guess I love that, our audience here is, parents and kids. And so I love this visual of, for a diet recommendation, I completely disagree with the USDA's, dietary, the pyramid and all of that. It's so, a whole nother talk, but
so maybe we'll have to have a, part 2 interview.
Absolutely. And I would love to do that. Absolutely. But so, overall this visual, and for kids, I love it especially, is eat the rainbow. So the more fruits and veggies and colors and variety that you can get from plant-based sources in your diet, that is an optimal diet.
Okay. I love that. And we do talk about that in our cooking classes. So
awesome.
We're on the right track.
Yes. You're doing amazing things. I love that you're meeting kids where they are and, getting them started with this education that is so important and is going to carry them through for the rest of their lives. They're going to think back to you 20 years from now and say, oh, that's right. I'm going to eat the rainbow. And
that's the hope. That is the hope. Yeah. All right. So last question. What essentially do you feed your son? Does your son eat a plant-based diet?
So this is something that, I have fought this battle now as a mom. So it's not just from a medical perspective, but now having my own son who is almost 2 years old,
Mhm.
he has been raised thus far on a plant-based diet.
Okay.
He has been exposed inadvertently to like eggs or dairy here or there, really infrequently, kind of
Yeah.
um, if like a family member has fed it to him, and
Yeah.
and we're having like a big get together or something. So at home, he is eating 100% plant-based.
Okay.
We really encourage, we're doing, he's in the toddler stage, so we're really doing that whole exposing him to a lot of foods, and he may look at them one day and wipe them all on the floor, and then the next day, like the other night, he just looked at a bowl of tomatoes, cherry tomatoes, and was like, tomato, and gobbling them up for the first time, like nothing I've ever seen. So that was, of course, really gratifying. I'm like, yes, there's your red food for the day. So yes, so I think it's been really fun to see that he is thriving on a plant-based diet, meeting all of his nutritional needs. He is, obviously keeping up with his growth and his height and his weight, and everything is coming along really nicely. So I'm seeing firsthand, yes, it can be done. I do pay special attention to make sure that he is getting all the nutrients that he needs. We have done some iron supplementation here and there in the past, and trying to think what else, and we've done some B12 too,
Okay.
that's an important one for following a vegan or plant-based diet. We've done some B12, and we basically have a nightly routine where he takes his, his drops or his, B12 spray, and he loves it. I mean, he's like, yeah, give me more. So
Yeah.
I have to tell him like, no, you get one spray.
Yeah.
So, but I'm really focusing on giving him everything that he needs through his diet more so than supplements. I just mentioned that as it's always there for when you need it. And of course too, with having a little one, so starting off so young on a plant-based diet, you can't just kind of give a 6-month-old baby a carrot when he's first starting. So that for me has been a learning process, and it's been kind of fun. I mean, I love to cook food too, so that helps. But finding like the right foods for his palate, and how many teeth he has, and all of those kinds of things. So I think he ate. He had this like favorite lentil soup. He would eat it breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And so he went through definitely a good couple of months where like that was his staple, and he loved it. I would sneak in all kinds of veggies there, and so we're definitely evolving from that. And but and hummus is the other one that
Yeah,
is.
those are two good ones. I guess if that's the only thing your child will eat, I mean, so those aren't bad.
Right.
Yeah, those are pretty good. Well, that is amazing. So, where can people follow you and find more information about you? I don't know. I know you're on Facebook and Instagram, but let people know where they can find you.
Yep, absolutely. So, so I do maintain an Instagram account. It's just at Dr. Lindsey Merritt. And then same on Facebook. I'm Dr. Lindsey Merritt over there as well. I have a Facebook page, and generally, I just love the social media platform because I think it's such a great way to connect with people outside of the clinical setting, and really try to show what kinds of things am I eating, what am I feeding my son, just to kind of help provide support and create that community that we're all doing this together and learn from each other, and how can we really just promote a plant-based diet to increase the health of our population.
Yeah.
So come find me over there, message me. I'm happy to talk in more detail with any of you. And thanks so much. It's been awesome talking with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for making the time to do this. I know you're super busy. I saw you firsthand at the hospital, so I am so grateful you've made the time to do this. So thank you so much. And I will also put your info when I add the notes when I post on our YouTube channel.
Okay, fantastic.
Okay.
Thank you.